Hi guys, we are here today to talk about keeping our dogs busy during COVID-19. So one of the top questions I've been getting the last couple of weeks as all these shelter-in-place orders have come in across the world is how do I keep my dog busy? What kinds of things to do for him? What can I do to keep him busy? What are some ideas of things to do for my dog? I know a lot of our dogs are used to regular outings and regular walks and regular exercise and things that are being cut back now quite extremely depending on where you are in the world. And so this is one of the top questions that I've been getting. So that's what I want to go over today is I want to give you some of ideas that you can use to keep your dog busy and keep everybody sane in your home right now. And some of these ideas are really good also for days where you're just not feeling that well. So, once we're all past all of this stuff and our lives return to normal, some of these ideas work really well for keeping our dogs busy when we are just not feeling well enough to give them their normal exercise. Okay, and Elizabeth says COVID-19 has me missing public places. So I'm very fortunate. I live on 10 acres. I have a couple of horses to train. I have my dogs to care for. I'm working more instead of less to support all of you guys during this time. And even I am still going, I just want to go to the store and buy anything, right? I just want to get out. I just want to go somewhere else. And I have plenty to do. And so it kind of gives me a new, sense of empathy for what our dogs go, or for what most pet dogs go through, or service dogs in training who aren't going into public every day, where they're just not leaving our homes all that much. That's what we're talking about today, how to keep our dogs busy. Right, so normally when I talk about exercise and I talk about keeping our dogs sort of busy, I always like to look at what I call my exercise formula. So if you guys have been around before, I'm going to move a little bit. If you guys have been around a while, you've heard me talk about this. And in a normal world, during normal times, I say we follow this formula, 20 to 30 minutes of exercise, aerobic exercise. Usually I say biking, or I say running, or I say something like that, right? And then we do 10 to 30 minutes of mental exercise, so getting our dog's brains thinking, because burning or learning something new actually burns calories. And that's one of the reasons that it makes our dogs so tired to learn a new trick or a new behavior. And then after we do the mental exercise, we bring it down a notch again and give the dog something to chew on. Because what I have found is that our young dogs, especially if you have a high energy dog or breed, they're not that good at self-regulating and calming back down after the exercise. So we all know that a high energy, adolescent lab like Leo, who I'm living with right now, needs physical exercise, right? But what he also needs is to come back down off that exercise high in order to actually be able to be calmer in the house. So what I have found is that this works really well. When we start big, we do our physical exercise, then we go into mental exercise, and then we give our dogs something to chew on. That chewing can be very self-soothing and help them really calm back down after the exercise as opposed to stay on that high. So what I want to talk about today is customizing this or adjusting this for now, when maybe biking isn't so much an option and walking isn't so much an option, and some of those normal exercise things that we do aren't so much an option. But I'm still going to talk about, it's still this formula. It's still start with the physical exercise, then the mental exercise, and then let's give our dogs something to chew on. Okay, so in the house, there are a handful of ways we can get exercise. So first, of course, is just something simple like this. So if you have a dog who fetches, playing fetch down a hallway can be great exercise. And we're going to go through lots of options. If your dog doesn't fetch, stay with me. But this is one way that we can get our dogs some exercise, right? If you have a fetcher, no, it's not a very long distance, but even fetch just down one hallway or just across one little room still gets their heart pumping, it gets them moving, it gets them running. Then, as we can even make it harder or more physical exercise by adding in some jumps. So here I've got Kenzie, my toddler, just going over a few pillows as she runs down the hallway. The thing about jumping is you guys want to remember if you have a dog under the age of 18 months old, we want to keep the jumps under elbow height and not too repetitive. So if you have a puppy, for example, we maybe don't want to jump at all, or we only want to jump below elbow height and only a couple of times. Kenzie's an adult, so she could do this for quite a while going over this jump, and it would be quite safe for her joints. So then you can add as many different jumps or as many different obstacles as you want, and we can get our dogs running and jumping or crawling under, or you use your creativity here. But this can really get their heart pumping and get them some of that exercise. Now, if you feel like getting some of your exercise at the same time, we have games like this. So this is chase. So what I'm trying to do here is get Izzy, my little terrier, to chase me around the couch. But she is doing that typical, she's not doing it, right? She's not chasing me. She's trying to keep me from coming all the way around the couch or whatever. But all that matters is in this example, she is running and she is getting some of that physical exercise. And so now what I'm going to use is actually start to use treats to reinforce her for catching me. And we can jump forward just a little bit. Reinforce her for catching me so that she wants to catch me, and as I run around the couch, she can run around with me and really get some of this running happening. So what we're looking for, as you guys can see, is just ways to get our dogs moving, ways to get them running. And it doesn't have to be outside. If you have a non-slip surface in your home, you've got a big area rug or you have a carpeting, then we can get our dogs running. And so my attempt was here for me to run around the couch and have Izzy chasing me, and she just wasn't going to do it exactly as I had planned, but that was okay, right? Because the goal is just to get her running. So chase can be great, but this of course requires that you run, and that this wore me out doing this video with her. And then what we can also do is, let me find my video quick because I have lost, there we go. If you have a dog, if you either don't want to run or can't run, or you have a dog who won't play fetch, then I like to do this. So I have treats in my hand, and I'm going to throw them back and forth across the room. So she goes and she gets one treat, and then as soon as she looks up at me, I throw a treat the other direction. She eats that treat, and then when she looks at me, I throw the treat the other direction. And we can go back and forth like this and back and forth. And this can get her really up and running again. And so this is where we're getting some of that, aerobic exercise, getting our dogs to really run. Now, if you have multiple people in your home, this can also be a great option because what this does is it's going to get them running, and we're also going to get into a little bit of that mental exercise, and we're also practicing coming when called. So this is a German Shepherd. Let me just jump ahead a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're just calling her back and forth. So her handler calls her, and then I call her, and we're just calling her back and forth. So this works on our recall, and it gets her running. But as she gets good at this, we're actually going to turn this into hide and seek, and I'll move me so you can see a little better. As she gets good at this, I'm going to jump ahead. We're going to actually turn this into hide and seek. So when she's with her mom, I hide, and then I call her. And then when she's with me, her mom will go hide, and then her mom will call her. And so what will essentially happen is we're playing hide and seek, right? So we're having her search the room for us. And let's see, let's fast forward and get to a point where you can actually see her doing this. So all you need for this are two people. If you have more than two people, you can certainly, there we go. If you have more than two people, you can certainly incorporate more than two people. This is a great one for kids. If you have kids in your home, this is an excellent one. Children love playing hide and seek with the dog. It gets them involved. It gets the dogs engaging with them in an appropriate way. And you can do this in as small a space or in as large a space as you have. So if you have a whole house and you've got a couple of stories, once your dog is good at this, you can have one person upstairs and one person downstairs and calling them back and forth, right? If you just have an apartment, just use your apartment. So like in this room, I've already found a handful of different hiding places, but the dog is searching. She's moving, she's searching. The benefit of this is we're also practicing our recall, which I think is super. I love when I can get more than one thing done at once. So in this exercise, in this game, I've got the dog up and running. I'm working on her recall, and we're also doing mental exercise because she has to think. She's not just running, she actually has to think about it. So these are a few ways that you can get your dog up and running, right? Up and moving. So this is where we get into, that's that aerobic exercise, okay? And after 5 to 20 minutes of this, depending on how much energy you have, how much energy your dog has, that type of thing, I was going to also say, do not underestimate the power of just a good old-fashioned game of tug. And I was going to show you guys a video, but now I can't quite find it. A couple of my dogs are quite maniacal tuggers, right? I can absolutely wear out. I have 7 dogs in my home, okay? And I can absolutely wear out 5 of them just with a good game of tug. I can run around my living room a little bit. I can really get them engaged with tug of war. And here we go. Okay, so this is just something I shot this morning. And I'm going to mute it because you don't need to hear me talking. But a good, just running around with my tug toy and then letting Kenzie tug on it, this is a great form of exercise. So don't underestimate some of these more typical, fetch or tug of war if your dog will play with you in that fashion. And if your dog won't play with you, if your dog's not a tugger or not a fetcher, now is a great time to build that skill, to teach our dogs to tug and to teach our dogs to play. But those are just a few ways that we can get our dogs up and moving. So if you missed the beginning of this live, when we end here, you're going to want to go back and watch the beginning because I gave a few examples here so that if your dog doesn't play with toys or one of these options doesn't work for you, I've given you a bunch of different options. So if you have questions, guys, you can always ask them in the comments. So TJ asks, what about multiple dogs? So I have multiple dogs and I separate mine when we do these games. I do this one at a time. If your dogs get along really well, some of these things you can do with multiple. Sometimes you can play fetch with multiple dogs. Sometimes you can do the hide and seek game with multiple dogs. But generally, you're going to want to consider separating them out because we don't want to have issues. So if I have 2 dogs going after the same treat, I could potentially have an issue, right? So think about that when you do this. So for me, I just put my dogs away. And how to keep the dog who's away busy is the next few options here could work. Okay, so then once we do our physical exercise, right, the next step is to get our dog's brain working. And you can go through this whole formula in 20 minutes. You can do 5 to 10 minutes of physical exercise, 5 to 10 minutes of mental exercise, and then you can give your dog something to chew on. So this doesn't have to take an hour. So then getting our dog's brains working, one of the easiest ways to do this is scatter feeding, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples. So this is how I almost always feed Epic. This is one of my little dogs. I almost never feed him out of a bowl. I almost always toss the food around for him to smell, or for him to search. So as you can see here, it's just an 8-second clip, but there's food on the floor, there's food on the couch, there's food underneath those pillows. And so he's actually sniffing out each individual piece of food and moving the pillows out of his way, and then he'll get down on the floor and he'll get all the ones on the floor. So scatter feeding can actually work really well for this as well. Then another variation of this is wrapping the dog food in a towel. So what I did here was I put the towel on the floor, and I kind of scattered the dog food, lay the towel down, put some dog food on, fold it over, give some more dog food, fold it again, more dog food, fold it again. So as Leo snuffles around in this towel, you're going to see, there is dog food in there for him to find. So as he's snuffling around, he's going to get the little pieces. He's also going to have to sniff out each individual piece of food that's on the floor, all of that stuff. And so scatter feeding, this is just an easy one. So this was just Leo's breakfast. This is just how I fed him breakfast today. But instead of putting it in a bowl where he would have eaten it in maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I mean, he inhales his food, you guys. He's a Labrador. Instead of that, it actually took him 5 minutes to find every single piece of food. And if this comes after the physical exercise, it really helps to bring them down a notch to get them into a calmer, more relaxed state after the high energy. Now, another great thing that is really great, and I think people underestimate, is just good old-fashioned trick training. But especially, I'm going to jump forward, any trick that gets them using their body in a new way. So like here, I'm just teaching Leo to crawl. Okay, I'm using a lure and I'm using a clicker and I'm teaching him to crawl. And so what this does is it gets his brain thinking, training, learning new behaviors, really gets our dog's brains working. And it burns calories to get their brains working. So all I'm doing here is luring him around. But if you pick tricks that work your dog's body, crawling, Leo doesn't crawl, he runs, right? So in order for him to crawl across the ground, he has to use a completely different set of muscles. And so we get a brain workout and we're actually getting some of that physical workout. So this is the difference between, the videos I showed you before are examples of like, going for it's aerobic exercise, like running or biking or rollerblading, right? This is an example of like where humans might do push-ups or sit-ups or some type of free weight. It gets a different set of muscle working and moving. And then this is one, this is something we've been working on with our academy members, I'll jump forward, is if you teach your dogs to go around a cone or I'm just going to skip ahead again so we can find it. There we go. So if you teach your dogs to go around a cone or a chair or a garbage can or something, it's just a trick. You're just teaching your dog to go around an object. Then you can actually start to have them go around two objects in a row. So like here, Leo's going to go around the cone and then he's going to go around the second cone. And so this, again, it gets his brain thinking because he has to, fast forward here. There we go. So it gets his brain thinking because he's learning something new. It also gets his body moving because he's circling these cones and he's moving around the room. So this is what this looks like at, I don't know why I paused it. We keep playing it. This is what this looks like at this more novice level, right? So he learns to go around one cone. Then I teach him to go around two cones in a row. Then, if we jump forward into this video, I have my more advanced dog. This is not the video I was thinking of, but that's okay. With a more advanced dog, you can get them really running across the room. So you can get them really running again. So this is, again, that physical exercise because we've got them up and moving, mental exercise because they're learning something new. So when we talk about training as the mental exercise portion of the exercise formula, practicing something your dog already knows is good, but teaching them something new is better because it takes a lot more brain power to learn something new than it does to practice something you already know. Okay, so we've got our physical exercise, then we do the mental exercise, and then I like to give my dogs something to chew on. So if you have like brand new baked bones or pig ears or something like that, that's great. But also I like to fill Kongs or old marrow bones. So what I have here is I just have the dog food in the bowl has been soaking in water, warm water, so that when I put it in my blender, it will blend up. Okay, and then, I found a couple of things of sardines in my kitchen because I keep them around for the dogs. And what I'm going to do is blend these together to create a filling for my Kong. So you can do this with whatever you have hanging out at home. It can be just your dog's dog food if he'll eat that, but I'm going to mix in some sardines. If you have a cat, a couple tablespoons of cat food can make the filling smell really good. You can flavor it with peanut butter or pumpkin. You can flavor this, and give my cat the empty tin to keep him busy, but you can flavor this filling with anything that dog safe, obviously, that you have laying around. So in my blender is just dog food that has been soaking in warm water, and it is sardines. And I'm going to blend it up and turn it into like the sort of like pasty gross thing, right? And then I'm just going to put it into the Kong and into these old pieces of marrow bone, and I can freeze it. Okay, and then once these are frozen solid, it will take my dogs much longer to eat them than if I just put the filling in the Kong and handed it over. So if I put this into the Kong and just give it to my dogs, they will absolutely eat it and be done in less than a minute. They're very efficient. They will get all that filling out of the Kong in less than a minute. If I freeze it solid, on the other hand, it will take up to 30 minutes for them to get it out. So then what I've done, right, if I do 10 minutes of physical exercise, 10 minutes of mental exercise with training, and then I give them a frozen Kong, that can really help keep, you see the formula we're trying to work through. We're trying to get them the physical exercise they need, the mental exercise they need, and then the something new to chew on to keep them occupied. Okay, so you can do if you have a whole bunch of Kongs laying around or a whole bunch of bones you can stuff, you can do a whole bunch of these at once and get them out periodically throughout the day to give your dog something to do. If you only have one, then just refill it as often as you can. But this is one easy way to fill your Kongs with probably stuff you already have, because I'm sure you already have dog food. Right? And that's the base of this. And then if you want to make it more exciting, you can add, like I said, sardines. If you've got wet dog food or wet cat food laying around, a couple tablespoons of that can make it smelly. Salmon, canned salmon, pumpkin, any of that kind of stuff you can throw in to sort of flavor it and make it more smelly and delicious, right? And then the last thing that I want to talk about is do not, again, underestimate the power of simply teaching your dog to be calm in the house. So what I do is I capture it. We could just call this capturing calmness. And when my dogs are laying around calmly, they're laying down, maybe chewing a bone, maybe asleep, maybe just relaxing at my feet or relaxing across the room, I will actually go over and just hand them a treat or a piece of dog food, and then go back to what I was doing. So I'm just reinforcing my dogs for being calm, for being relaxed. Our dogs, a lot of them, if you have a high energy breed or a breed who is bred to work, a lot of them need some help learning how to be calm in the house. It's not something that they're very good at just on their own, especially if they're in the middle of adolescence and they have all that extra energy that we're trying to work with. So if you can use this formula, and again, if you joined us late, check out the beginning of this live here when we end. But you want to get them some type of physical exercise. And I gave you a bunch of ideas for that. And be creative, okay? And if you guys have any ideas I didn't talk about, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. So if you have an idea for physical exercise that you can do indoors, or mental exercise you can do indoors, or ways to keep your dog busy that I didn't talk about, I'd love to hear about in the comments. Last week, I did a live talking about building confidence and socialization in our service dogs. And that video also has excellent ideas for keeping your dog busy. So I've got a couple more variations of scatter feeding, variations of work to eat, stuff like that. So there's that video as well that I did last week, and I will put the link to that in the description of this video when I'm done here. But if you can utilize this formula, if you can start with physical exercise, then get your dog's brain thinking, teaching him something new, using scatter feeding, teaching a trick that uses his body, and then giving him a stuffed Kong, preferably that's been frozen solid, or something to chew on, or even scatter feeding, so you could do exercise of some kind, teaching a trick, and then you could do scatter feeding. But something where we start high energy and work our way down to either sniffing or chewing, that can really help bring our dogs down to a place where they're capable of being calm in the house because we've met their needs for physical and mental exercise. And then we can actually teach our dogs to be calm by capturing that calmness throughout the day, by giving them a treat for being calm, for being relaxed, for laying down, for chewing on their own stuff. And when you start to do that, if you do that for the first time, when you go over and give your dog a treat, he will absolutely get up and follow you, okay? And that's okay. I promise. The more you reinforce your dog for being calm, the more he will be calm in the future. Even though it seems like you interrupted the calmness and now he's getting up. Okay? And then I think there was one other thing that I wanted to share with you guys and I have completely lost it. That's okay. I'll put it in the comments if I think about it, if I can think of it later. But those are all of my ideas for you. If you guys have any questions about this, throw them in the comments. Like I said, if you're here live or if you're watching the replay, if you have ideas that I didn't mention, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Oh, the thing I forgot to tell you is searching for treats. I forgot to get a video of this morning, but teaching your dog to search for hidden treats in your house can work really well also for that mental exercise. So if I put a treat, over in the corner and then tell my dog to go find it, teaching him to really search the entire room for treats that are hidden under the sofa or hidden under a pillow or put in the corner, that's another excellent form of mental exercise. Dogs are very good with their noses, as you guys I'm sure know. And if we can get them really using that nose, that can actually go a long way for helping them be calm and actually wearing them out as well. Okay. So, any questions? Okay. Okay, so we've got a question. Would it be okay to have an 8-month-old puppy run on hard floor or marble floor? So if you have hard surfaces in your house, you want to be really careful because your dogs can absolutely injure themselves slipping on a hard surface. So if they slip on a hardwood floor, if they slip on a marble floor, they can absolutely hurt themselves. So if you have even just an area rug or a couple of runners, like if you can put enough rugs in the hallway to allow your dog to run back and forth, or if you have an area rug in your living room, even if you're just confined to a small space on that rug, you can really get your dog running and moving a lot, even in a small space, even if it's just up and down the hallway where you put extra rugs or an area rug in your kitchen or living room or something like that. Okay, and then so there are snuffle mats you can make. So I've made a sniffer mat. They like it, but should I use something more like what they would find in his environment? It's totally up to you. You guys want to be creative with this. So I love scatter feeding, and I love finding new and very different ways to do it. So in its simplest form, I might just throw a handful of food onto the carpet for my dogs to sniff around. And then I showed you, wrapping it in a towel or hiding it under pillows. If you have a yard you have access to, throwing it into the grass so that your dog can sniff and eat the food, although not if you have a puppy you're working on not eating unedible objects. So I love throwing food into the grass for my dogs to really sniff around and find every piece, but not with a puppy who's in a phase where they're eating things that are not edible. So if you have a puppy who's eating grass or eating twigs, then that would not be a good option. So, like Elizabeth says, the snuffle mat has been a lifesaver with my 90-week-old Golden. So, they make snuffle mats that you can buy. You can Google the word snuffle mat and make your own. You can come up with variations, like I use towels and blankets a lot. There are lots of ways to do this. So Harley says teaching new tasks has really helped Comet this past week. Yeah, so tasks are a good example of really just getting their brains thinking. We really just want to get their brains thinking. TJ says they've used hula hoops. So I've taught all of my dogs to go through a hula hoop, then progressing to a chair or something, right? So we can build these little obstacle courses, right? If you've got a hula hoop around, teach them to go through it. If you've got something they can circle around, teach them to go around. Teach them to crawl under. These are all really great things that get our dog's brains working and bodies working. So Elizabeth says, at 9 weeks old, what tricks can you teach? So 9-week-old puppies are definitely capable of learning all the tricks, okay? You just want to remember they're not very coordinated, and we don't want to do too much repetitive movement that could potentially hurt joints. So you could do a little bit of crawling, or you could have them climbing over pillows, but we don't want to do it repetitively. But things like play dead, things like shake, things like roll over, things like spin in a circle. These are all excellent tricks that your dogs can learn at any age. Doing a figure 8 between your legs. I'm trying to think of other tricks I've taught in the past. All of these things, though, you can go on YouTube and search for any dog tricks, and a whole bunch of stuff is going to come up. 9-week-old puppies can learn all the tricks. You just want to remember they're not very coordinated and that their bodies are growing and developing. So if you think about, just like a 5-year-old can do all the sports, it's just going to look different when it's in a 5-year-old body versus a 25-year-old body, right? So we just want to kind of adjust our expectations. Okay. And if you have multiple dogs, just allowing them to wrestle can be good. Shelly says, one dog is ball obsessed and needs that. A couple others will hand wrestle with our hands. Some will not really play with toys. Every dog is different. But play is something, so in our academy for our new members right now, we're working very specifically through a challenge to teach them to play with their dogs better and more effectively. So we've actually had daily assignments and they're teaching them to be better players, because I think that not only is play vastly underutilized in the service dog training world, it also makes you a better reinforcer. It makes you better at reinforcing your dog, which makes you a better trainer. It makes you more interesting, so you're more likely to actually hold your own when your dog has the option between a distracting environment and hanging out with you. And then it's also right now a great way to keep our dogs busy and a great way to get them some of that exercise, because tug and chase and fetch and wrestling and all of these things are great forms of exercise. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. If you guys have any questions later, you can always throw them in. We would love to see videos of what you're doing inside our Facebook group, Train Your Service Dog with Confidence. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, I'd love to have you click that like button, share it anywhere that you think other owner trainers would find this information helpful. And then, like I said, if you have ideas for how to keep our dogs busy during this time that I haven't mentioned, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Okay, guys? All right, have a great day.